We're going to crack on with the show now and talk about data breaches. It's my absolute privilege to be welcoming back our host anchor today, Reid Darby. Reid, welcome back. Thank you so much for being a part of CyNam again.
Chris, thank you so much. What a privilege. Really exciting programme. I know we keep on saying that, but it's absolutely true. Tonight, we are in for a real treat when we think about data breaches. I'm particularly excited because it's one of my special subjects. And it's my great pleasure to introduce you to the ladies of Cheltenham Hacking Society. We've got Helen Major and Dr. Natalie Cole. Helen is a cyber defence analyst and Natalie's a cybersecurity engineer. Welcome both. We're going to be talking about OpSec, up close and personal, with data breaches. So firstly, Helen, if I come to you, what is OpSec and why should individuals be aware?
So OpSec really stands for operational security, and its origins stem back to military or covert operations, so it's a little bit secret squirrely, but I really think it's a term we all need to become a bit more familiar with and adopt into our daily lives. It really helps to understand what data exists about ourselves, how we might be telegraphing that, and whether or not it's a risk to us.
Secret squirrel, fantastic. Nat, what do you mean by telegraphing? And can you give us some examples?
Yeah, so telegraphing is a term to describe what information you're broadcasting. So a good example is content you might be sharing on your social media feed. And we share a lot of information online. So information about our pets, our family, places we like to go, when our birthday is, so much personal data. And as well as what you're sharing, it's really important to be aware of your privacy settings so you know what data spheres your data is circulating in.
So if I was involved in a data breach, why should I care? I'll start with you, Helen.
So really we need to be thinking about the cumulative picture that builds with each breach that we might be involved in. There could be a partial password and an email or a phone number in one breach and the other half of it somewhere else. So really it's about thinking how that data picture can build and how attackers could use it. Nat, what would you add?
Yeah, so as we've seen over the years, some breaches contain some really juicy unencrypted data, like sometimes even plain text passwords. And if we're going to use breach passwords as an example, with multiple breaches, an attacker can build up a picture of the passwords you use and also patterns you use to create them so they can guess others. The good news is that it is easy to find out whether you've been in a breach and what data might have been involved by using tools like Have I Been Pwned and Google Alerts. And it's good practice to use these tools because you might not always be notified if a breach has occurred, particularly if there's not financial data involved or the breach has happened outside the UK. Helen, I think you've got something to add to this.
Yes, so if attackers can combine sensitive breach data with other open source data from social media accounts, then it becomes intelligence that they can use and potentially means a huge amount of data is available per person, in about all of us. So it's definitely one to watch.
That is sort of exposed is not necessarily that sensitive. If it's combined with other data, that could be a real pain. So Nat, what can criminals do with this once this info is sort of available? What would they do with it?
So I think the most well-known crimes are financial crimes, things like identity theft and fraud, and we're all quite aware of those. And a common strategy to maximise access to your data is exploiting recycled passwords. So say one of your passwords is in a breach, or it's easily guessed because you use your pet's name and your birthday and you've shared that information on your Facebook page. And then say you've used it in multiple accounts. So for example, your work email and your personal email. With that one password, an attacker can rapidly compromise many parts of your life. And I know Helen's got a really great crime example to share with us.
Yeah, there are so many crimes that many people haven't even heard of yet. Attackers can be really creative. The Strava heat map included location data that criminals used to find where bikes were kept. They then found those people and their photos on Facebook to see if the bike was expensive, if it was worth stealing, effectively creating a shopping list. And they could also see when it was little Timmy's football practice so that they knew when the house was empty and they could go and nick it. So I think you could be targeted for something that you have, like a fancy bike, or you could be targeted because you're a pivot point into your organisation, and attackers can use that info to socially engineer you or your company.
Nat, you've mentioned the link between home and work. Could you explain a little bit more about that link?
Yeah, so it makes sense to keep our personal data safe, to keep ourselves safe, but it's also important to be aware that it can affect other parts of your life. And work is one part of our lives where the knock-on effects can be really significant. So as Helen's just mentioned, you could potentially be the entry point for an attacker to gain access to your company. And it's worth bearing in mind with COVID-19, a lot of us are working from home, and it means the lines between work and home are more blurred than ever. I know Helen's got some good examples, haven't you?
Yeah, Nat, you're so right about the blurred lines. And it's been such a necessity in lockdown, but it is important to have these distinctions. Some of the real common mistakes that we see are using work emails for personal interests and vice versa. This was one of the reasons that Ashley Madison hacks were so damaging. And again, passwords are important. If you're using the same passwords at work as you are at home, then if your supermarket account gets hacked, for example, but it's the same login that you use for your work, then that's it, bish, bash, boom, account compromised. So let's also think about sharing work on social media. That's another one. Photos in our uniforms say where we work or what we do. And many of us have posted a picture on our first day at work that says, ta-da, look at my badge. That tells an awful lot. And heaven forbid, we've all seen those photos where we've got a password on the whiteboard behind us, or, even a post-it note on the monitor. And I think in today's terms, you can think of that as, maybe try blurring your background or sanitizing your shelves and bookcases so that your privacy stays at home.
So, Nat, how could this type of data actually be used to gain access to a work system or a work infrastructure in practice?
So the scariest thing, I think, is potentially attackers using things like images of your uniform or your work badge that you might have shared online to gain physical access. But also, say you've shared where you work on social media and you've also shared pictures of your dog Billy, who you use as your work password. An attacker could potentially piece together credentials for a work system, say your email system, and then from there move into other systems, potentially accessing company data like who your clients are, leading to further data breaches. And also, if they've got access to corporate data, it means they can create a more credible attack vector for the next link in the chain. So, for example, targeting your clients using spear phishing, or now even deep fakes of you based on online content you've shared, like a video of you on Facebook. And your company could then in turn become the next foothold in a supply chain attack. So a recent example of this type of attack is the SolarWinds hack recently. And that was just one compromised company, but there were huge knock-on ramifications. So it's really important to be aware of the potential consequences for your business. Helen, I think you've got some more on this as well.
Yeah, it's really key that you were just mentioning phishing right there. It's a really common threat vector. IBM's 2020 threat intel report has just come out, and it stated that 30% of victim environments were accessed this way. And basically, it's an attack targeting humans. So a rich data source means it's easier for attackers to tailor their approach and be more successful.
And if I can stay with you, Helen, how can we reduce the risk to ourselves and our businesses, given they're quite big?
So I think we've covered some of the basics, but I think that we could go further. If businesses are able to support their employees in developing and protecting their own personal OpSec, then I think everybody wins. We have to remember it's pretty easy for Nat and I to talk about cybersecurity because this is our industry, but we can't assume other people's knowledge if this isn't your day job. So do make sure your company's security training is available to everyone. Make it interesting and make sure you include your support staff. So that could be your support workers or temporary workers, and especially target your business VIPs. If more people have good personal data habits, they will bring these habits into the workplace too. Nat, what would you add?
So one thing you could do as an employer is provide your employees with benefits like access to a password manager for personal use. So you're helping them stay safe, but it could also have knock-on benefits to your organisation for the reasons we've already discussed. And this is actually a perk we get for being part of the Ladies Hacking Society team. And one, it's really useful for us personally, but two, it helps us keep each other safe as well.
Well, I mean, we've gone through quite a lot of material there. That's been absolutely amazing. Thank you, Helen and Nat. Great chat. Anything else you'd just like to add before we wrap up, Nat?
Yeah, so in terms of some tips to bear in mind, make sure you Google yourself so you can see what information you're telegraphing. And also you can use tools like Google to set up alerts for data breaches. And if you haven't already, take the plunge and look at what breaches you've already been involved with using Have I Been Pwned. It's a really easy website to use. If you've got any old or dormant online accounts, make sure you delete them. And then just really good password hygiene. Make sure your passwords aren't easy to guess based on what you've shared on social media. Don't recycle them, and use something like a password manager to make that as easy as possible.
Helen, anything from you?
Yeah, so I agree with Nat. I love your tip. Be mindful about what you're telegraphing. Check your privacy settings and know what your data spheres are. Where is all this information circulating? And keep baking security as part of a day-to-day routine to your business culture. I was at a security conference recently, and I saw Frank Abagnale, who is the person the Catch Me If You Can movie is based on. And his leaving parting comment was, just don't make it easy for people to steal from you. I thought this was an excellent piece of simple advice. So, that's my thing. Nat, I think I've forgotten something. What is it?
Oh, yeah, you should definitely come to our breakout session. It's going to be hosted by our Ladies of Cheltenham teammate Jenny, and we have special guest, the Security Queen, so make sure you're there.
Brilliant. Thank you, ladies. Fantastic. Look forward to seeing you later. Well, wasn't that a great first start?